Hello everybody, welcome back to Solving Standard. I'm Corbin Hostler and I have a brew for you today. So Rivals of Ixalan is out. We've had a lot of bans in the format, of course. Ferocidon is gone, Ramanap Ruins is gone, Teamer Energy, all the energy decks got hit. Attune with Ether and Rogue Refiner are gone. And that means the format is ripe for innovation. Now everyone is focused on the tribal decks. Obviously I had Merfolk out this week. I love Merfolk. I think it's going to be very good. But the point is, there is a lot to be done in this format, and I know there's going to be a million pieces of content out there about pirates or about dinosaurs or vampires or what have you, and all of that's fine. All of that is great. Those decks are going to be good. However, I've had this idea floating around in the back of my head ever since I printed this one right here, Wily Goblin, and I want to give it a shot because I think we have a chance now. So back in the day, way back, Magic history, there was a big red deck. I believe the first iteration was in Mirrodin Standard or something, and it used, I think, Arc Slug or some weird card. I don't know. It was just essentially a red control deck that would win. It was kind of a thing, sort of a thing, in Scars of Mirrodin block, and I remember playing around with it then. You'd have Tumble Magnets and all these cool cards that try to take control of the board, and you'd use Koth of the Hammer to produce a bunch of mana. The idea is if you could play Koth on turn 3, I think there's a way to do it on turn 3, but at least turn 4, then when you untap with Koth, you could add mana for each mountain you controlled and have a bunch of mana do whatever you wanted, and that deck finished with Wormcoil and some other stuff, and sometimes Treasure Post. It was a lot of fun. But what I've always had my eye on in Standard here is Wily Goblin is a 2-drop that makes mana. Chandra Torch of Defiance is a 4-drop that makes mana. Sunbird's Invocation is a pretty good payoff card. I just want to go 2-4-6. Goblin into Chandra into Invocation, and it works so well because Goblin makes a treasure, then it can chump block if you need to, or more likely you just take the hit. Chandra can come down, immediately destroy one of their creatures, plus you have the Goblin to block and protect Chandra, and then you untap, play your 4th land, make 2 mana with Chandra, play Sunbird's Invocation. At that point, whatever happens, maybe they kill your Chandra, maybe they don't, but now you're going to untap with a Sunbird's Invocation very early in the game. And what this reads is, when you cast a spell from your hand, reveal the top X cards of your library, where X is that spell's converted mana cost. You can cast a card with converted mana cost X or less without paying its mana cost. So what that means is, when we cast, say, a 6-drop like Etali Primal Storm, you can then cast anything else in the deck for free, including Noxious Gearhulk or more Sunbird's Invocations or what have you. So that's where we started, right? I had this idea of a big red deck, and I played a lot around with mono red, and they printed this card in Rivals of Ixalan, Pirate's Pillage, as an additional cost to cast it, discard a card, draw 2 cards, create 2 treasure for 4 mana. What that is sort of it's another Chandra, right? We can go Wily Goblin into Pirate's Pillage into Sunbird's Invocation. Now, Pirate's Pillage, of course, doesn't affect the board much. It's pretty slow, so it's no Chandra, right? And you know, we don't have, unless we want to get a little more iffy with our mana here, we don't have any other 2-mana generation, so we don't have, you know, a Direfleet Hoarder, which is one I actually considered, but the mana I think is a little awkward. I think it's better if we just stick to mono red. So that was where we started, and then I just filled out around that, and I of course started with a red shell. I thought about a red-white shell, and that is a perfectly reasonable way to go, where you get to play Approach of the Second Sun as your top end, and approach and win the game immediately. Pretty good. In fact, that deck top 16 nationals, very similar to this. So, but that's not what we did, because what I noticed playing this game is the deck, it needs more life gain, because in the old versions, you know, you could play Wormcoil Engine, and that would stabilize the board immediately. So I looked around in Standard for something that did that, and I stumbled on Noxious Gearhulk, which is great. It's a 6-mana card that it both stabilizes the board and gains you life, exactly what you want. So this is where we're at. We have Wily Goblin. This is the way to look at the deck. We have our mana generation. Wily Goblin, Captain Lannery's Storm. When it attacks, get a treasure. It's pretty great. Pirate's Pillage, Chandra, Torch of Defiance, and I guess you could count Transforming Treasure Map. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. So that's our mana there. Then we have removal. Of course, you need a lot of removal. Cut to Ribbons. Now, this is a great one. Now, I did learn that the Ribbons doesn't trigger Sunbird's Invocation. It only triggers from your hand. But it's still great. It deals 4 damage at sorcery speed, which is worse in some cases than Lightning Strike, which will deal 3 damage. But this kills Kumina, and that feels pretty relevant in Standard right now. Not to mention, Ribbons is a nice way to close out the game when you get to the late game. So, Magma Spray, great for your Scrap Heap Scroungers of the world. Abrade, great against everything. It destroys creatures. It destroys Godpharaoh's Gift. Cut, Ribbons, removal. Sweltering Suns. This is actually pretty important because the decks that will go wide, Merfolk, Vampires, sometimes the Pirates decks, but also Whirler Virtuoso decks. Those do still exist. Sweltering Sun's very important, and worst case, it can cycle. Then, of course, we have the Chandras and the Pirates Pillage. Then you need sort of win conditions, right? And we have Rekindling Phoenix, giving it a shot from Rivals of Ixalan here. It's perfect. It fits the theme. It's a nice recursive threat. It flies. It can come out on turn 3. A lot going on for Rekindling Phoenix here. And then Glorybringer. Of course, Glorybringer is just Glorybringer. It's incredibly powerful. It gets to come down both be a removal spell and a win condition. Then we have the Sunbirds Invocations. As I mentioned, Itali. This one's fun. Elder Dinosaurs, we have to do it, right? You get attack, you get some free stuff. Pretty awesome. And that art is just sweet. And then Noxious Gear Hulks to have removal. Rounding it out, Treasure Map. Great value card here. You can really turns into card advantage in the late game, sets up your draws in the mid game, can turn into a land when you need it for the mana boost, but also just gives you a bunch of treasure, which is mana boost in itself in this deck, and as well, obviously, can draw you cards after that. Now, the mana base, it's sort of a delicate balance here because we're trying to play Wily Goblin, we're trying to play Sweltering Suns, we're trying to play all these double red spells, so you really have to be careful with the non-red sources you include, and that's why I haven't gone deeper into black and really tried to push it. I don't want to play basic swamps in this deck, but we get 8 black sources with Canyon Slough and Dragon Skull Summit, and then I've gone ahead and put in a 9th one with the Cinder Barons here. You can generally afford on turn 1 to play tap land most of the time in this deck. It's not so bad. Later in the game, it's basically you only have 5 tap lands in total with the Canyon Sloughs and the Cinder Barons, and you're gonna be cycling these some amount of the time anyway. We do have 2 Field of Ruins just because it's a concession to search for Azcanta because that card is insane. We have to have an answer to it, but after that, we're just basic mountains. Riding it out. Now, onto the sideboard. Now, the main deck is really well set up against creature decks. I won't lie. That's what you want to beat. Some of the control decks, approach decks, some ways God Pharaoh's Gift. Those decks are the ones that are going to be more of a problem, but the sideboard has attempted to address that. So I have 4 Duresses and 3 Doomfalls for the control deck. So they're playing Scarab God. We need to answer it. Duress won't take the Scarab God, but it will take the rest of their hand, and Doomfall can do some work to get rid of the Scarab God. Now we have the other Magma Spray in here for the recursive creatures. The other Sweltering Suns for the Go Wide decks, and Hour of Devastation for the Go Wide decks. It is actually pretty important here because it makes creatures lose indestructible, and I have found myself dying to Odonto Vanguards, of all things, as well as occasional Ronus, etc., right? Some of the Amonkhet gods can make an appearance and be a problem now. So Hour of Devastation just ups your sweeper count. And with the treasure generation, you can play this on turn 4 a lot of the time. So Hour of Devastation, a really nice one there. And then Gleaming Barrier. This looks weird, but it does serve a purpose. It's a 0/4 that creates a treasure when it dies. Not only can you board it in against some of the Go Wide versions of Merfolk or Vampires or whatever, because it blocks, this is specifically the anti-Odonto Vanguard card, because that card is insane. It's the 1/1 for 2, but you can pay 4 life to make it indestructible. When it attacks, it gets +2/+0. And that's making something indestructible is pretty good against our removal deck, especially when that same creature, the 4 life isn't something we're going to be able to deal to them in a hurry. So Gleaming Barrier is actually just the perfect answer to that card, assuming it doesn't get pumped. But again, you can handle their lords and deal with that, but Gleaming Barrier blocks it perfectly. If they do remove it, it gives you some mana. And then Direfleet Daredevil. I've actually liked this against the control decks. They board in Duress a lot of time against our deck. And this is a perfect turn 3 play to play it, Duress them right back. And by the way, we also have a creature that can, get on in there and pressure, which is important. So that's the deck. Again, this is a work in progress. I've been working on this all day today, but it's got certainly some tweaks I'm sure that could be made, especially with the sideboard. But this is the deck, and I'm excited to brew with Rivals of Ixalan. So here we go. Thank you for watching, everyone. This is Big Red and Rivals of Ixalan Standard.